Hey y'all, what's up? Thank you for joining me here on my channel at Valchemy's Alchemy. My name is Valchemy, of course, and I wanted to discuss the Aquarius North Node transit. It's going to be occurring for the next 18 months. And I really got into the nodes right after like 2020. Then the North Node was in Gemini, South Node South Node, Sagittarius, my bad. It's the Aquarius North Node now. I guess that's why it's on my mind. But just to go back in time travel a little bit, back in 2020, that's when we had the world national C-19 situation, and it was crazy, right? There was a lot of confusion, a lot of information, a lot of things happening and being discussed that, because people were trying to figure out what the fuck was going on. So it was very confusing time, which is the energy that Gemini can sometimes bring along. And we were in that transit, right? So my spirit was like, girl, just gotta look at these North Nodes a little bit longer. Also, there were travel restrictions as well, which is like the Sagittarius South Node that we transited during that time as well, depending on whether, just it was just so much shit going on, right? Like, I remember one time Florida was like, bitch, if you ain't been in here, you can't come now. You better make arrangements. Like, it was crazy, but it didn't really get too much crazier than that as far as the states, but it was definitely crazy. It was definitely crazy. Like, all the kind of stuff was going on. So brings me to my point of the North Node and focusing on it. So I wanted to focus on the Aquarius North Node and the Leo North Node, okay? I'm sorry, Leo South Node, my apologies. So Aquarius North Node, Leo South Node. The nodes also, they last about 18 months. And if I'm understanding it correctly, basically the node is where the moon, as it's transiting, it meets at a certain point on a particular astrological axis, right? So right now at the horizon, basically. So right now as the moon crosses the horizon, it's meeting at the North Node of Aquarius, South Node, Leo, right? And it's always happening with the opposites of so it works really well, right? I've been talking about opposites as far as alchemy anyway, so it kind of works well to talk about the North Node. But I had to talk about it right now too, because currently we're in Leo season transiting, okay? We just had the Aquarius full moon as well, another groovy celestial event, along with a solar eclipse, right? So we have that going on as well. And it's so interesting to me that certain celebrities with particular celestial placements, Aquarius energy specifically, okay? Blueface is an Aquarius. And it's like right after the fucking eclipse, all of a sudden the circus is just really over here cutting up, okay? But not to say that, because honestly, that's any given motherfucking Sunday for them, okay? Them folks always got some, it's just a lot going on with them, okay? But moving along. Everybody has been under these influences. We're all going to continue to be under the North Node influences and South Node influences as well. And the North Node has a lot. So I'm like, let's just have a discussion about it, right? The North Node has a lot to do with the current trajectory of where we're headed, right? And this is Aquarius, all right? Now, this is the 11th house as well, which has a lot to do with technology. And there's been a lot of questions about data centers. And why I feel so Aquarius to me is because in 11th house to me, with Uranus also governing and kind of playing a part in these energies, right? It just feels abrupt because I'm like, when did we ever have did we vote on, I don't vote, but I was like, did we vote on, and shout out to people who do vote, right? But I was like, did y'all get together on this shit? Like where is this coming from? Why all of a sudden it's like an extra 50 fucking bucks on the light bill now? Like what is this really about? Because I didn't agree to this. Who do I need to talk to my alderman, right? I just feel like it was just abruptly. That's all I'm trying to say. It just abruptly hit a motherfucker. And that's kind of how Aquarius energy impacts and can kind of hit. It can be sudden changes, but what's interesting, and these are the sudden changes that affect the collective of humanity, right? Like all of a sudden there might be sanctions on like what you need for to participate in things, or like all of a sudden the gym that you go to is saying like, oh, it's required that you use this access number. You got to get your access number. And I was like, damn, okay. It's kind of abrupt, right? But the people who made these changes, right? The people who decided on these data centers, right? They had been having conversations, third house, about it and made some choices, seventh house about it, okay? We just wasn't invited to the conversation. And now all of a sudden it hits us as humanity like a goddamn ton of bricks. Like, what the fuck, right? So that's the energy that we're talking about when it comes to the 11th house. Also, just technology, period. This talks about AI and ChatGPT and just the future of humanity, period, right? The 11th house has a lot to do with humanity. Okay, how we integrate this technology. Shout out to Childish Gambino, Because of the Internet. That's a great fucking album, and I feel like it was still ahead of its time, still. But it just raised a lot of questions about how we are integrating this technology that's pretty much like the Wild Wild West. It's going very fucking fast, okay? And the laws are kind of hard to keep up with and establish because we're just in this space that we have never been to before, like this new frontier as humanity, right? For instance, I could take an image on my camera of somebody else. Now, that image is mine because I took it, but I took it of somebody else's likeness, right? And then we can have these conversations too about AI and shit like that, right? Like if I put the image on AI and then it, creates something else, right? Who does that belong to? The music industry has changed a lot as well. Music is now being made by AI. It can write your whole song. You can have a motherfucking artist sing it for you too, okay? You might just have a #1 hit, but is that your song? And then when it comes to streaming too, like it ain't nobody's no way because you can't. It's all for subscription based, okay? Technology and humanity are definitely on display, and there's been a lot of progressions that have happened, a lot of changes that are occurring, okay? And a lot of things that kind of make me wonder, like, humanity, what the F are we doing? Okay, and sometimes it's just happening kind of fast. But nonetheless, it's here. So let's talk about let's talk about the mythology too a little bit, because this is what I think is really interesting when it comes to Uranus, which is the governing planet of the 11th house, along with Saturn. Saturn is the planet of reality, and we're focused on the North Node, right? So as we talk about Uranus, right, he was the god. In fact, etymology, Uranus means sky. So he was the god of the sky, okay? Now, he had a bunch of kids with Gaia, but then he fucked around and he ate them. He's like, fuck these kids. And he ate them, girl, like just appetite and all. They all just in the body. And Gaia had to work on a plan to go get her kids back. The children had to rebel against their daddy. Okay, and cut their way out, literally, from Uranus, okay? But I think it speaks more to the metaphor that the things that we, as far as like technologies and shit, sometimes it's kind of interesting, kind of like Frankenstein moments, where something's been created, right? But then we didn't really know where this creation would go. And now it's like, what? Like, who would have thought we'd be having conversations about too much technology and the erasure of jobs, right? Or, too much technology and the erasure of our privacy. You know what I mean? So, but these are the kind of conversations that we're having, right? Like, as much as the technology, which is basically, I like to break down the word technology too, like it's a technique. And we've got these new digital techniques too, but like at one point plumbing was technology, right? Like indoor plumbing, because otherwise you'd have to go to the outhouse, right? And motherfuckers said, yo, it's a good thing to have indoor plumbing on, not just at the library. Let's take it to the house too, okay? And then humanity said, yeah, perfect. Bring the plumbing here, okay? Great for humanity, okay? So sometimes movements as far as, because I don't like to make any one thing sound like terrible or bad. There's good and bad in all this stuff, right? But technology or techniques at things can sometimes be some of the greatest advancements for humans, okay? Shout out to indoor plumbing. That was a great technology. Shout out to George Washington and the peanut, okay? Peanut butter is outstanding, okay? There have been some great technologies that have been produced for humanity that are so progressive in a way that it brings us together, okay? And then there are some things that also have divided humanity. Like, as great as it is to have a social media presence and be able to talk to people on social media, right? We don't visit as much. We don't go around each other as much, right? So there's that aspect as well, okay? So, you know, we got to take the sour with the sweet, the good with the bad when it comes to the technology conversation, right? But this is where we are as a North Node. So humanity, what the F are we doing? Okay. What are we going to be doing with these moments? Okay. Can we find a way to integrate the technology in a productive space where it's for the good of all concerned, right? Or does the humanity eat us like Uranus, right? You know, what are we doing? We got to see. Now, let's talk about the South Node. Now, the South Node is Leo. I had to think a little bit. I don't know why I got to think about Leo. Leo, vibrant as I'm doing this content, it's also Leo season as well. And then we have the celestial event of traveling through the Leo transit, the North Node transit, of course, that we just recently went into, as well as the eclipse of the solar eclipse with Leo and Aquarius. Okay, so Leo season been cutting up. It has. Leo is it's very much about the entertainment. Okay, the sun is here and the sun gives life. It grows life, right? It's a generator. So it's almost like the things that we entertain, right? They tend to generate for the future. Okay, so that's the axis that we're sitting on. The things that we are amused by, that make us feel good, are naturally gravitators to the things that we want to entertain, right? We're naturally just gonna go to shit that we, you know, just have a resonance with, right? And that's what the sun kind of brings out in us, right? So the things that we entertain, that we enjoy, that we're amused by, that make us feel good, okay, in the 5th house, especially coming from like the South Node aspect, these are things that we've kind of brought into from previous. I mean, like the technology conversation, for instance, right? That's been a thing. We've been on these smartphones, okay? We've been on this ChatGPT conversation. We've kind of been to some of these spaces, but now the conversations are coming up more because it's like, well, yeah, we've been entertaining this technology. We've integrated it. We've been using it for a couple of years now, you know, few years now, however long we've had these things, and we've gotten a chance to see what they're like to be on the day-to-day spaces, right? That we can, you know, amuse and entertain ourselves with. And we found out, as far as humanity and how the future progressed with that maybe our attention spans aren't the same, right? But at the same time now, you know, if I was a songwriter and I wanted to create a song, okay, I don't have to pay, you know, $2,000 for the engineer and the studio time and all the extra shit, right? And all that, you know, and the mixing and the mastering. I can literally just go on an AI app, type the lyrics in, and have AI Linda sing my stuff. Okay, so this is where we are with it. All right, how do we go forward with it? Humanity, what are we doing? Okay, we'll see. So far, you know, it's been mixed. I mean, I can kind of see it. I think the idea of creating a movie just using AI, if you are a person, and because that shit can get so expensive. Creatives, oh my gosh, shout out to you if you got a creative spirit, okay? Being a creative spirit costs, bitch. Okay, mediums cost money, and it's one of those things too where sometimes when you're in these creative spaces, they don't always have as much payout as like somebody who goes to school to get a certificate and go into a workforce, you know what I mean? Or who maybe creates their own business, right? If your business is making art, it really just depends on if motherfuckers fucking with it or not, period. You know what I mean? There's no guarantees when it comes to it, but it can be a costly investment as well. So I mean, in that sense, right? If I can just go online and do this shit, hey, that's not a bad thing. But then again, at the same time, because anybody in the community can go online and do it, does it lose its special? Does it even lose its authenticity? Okay, are you a real artist because you just used AI for everything, right? These are the conversations that people are going to be having, are going to be naturally being brought forth as we go into these spaces, as we figure out what we're doing, humanity, okay? Then with this 11th house North Node transit, Now, lastly, let's talk about the alchemy of the 11th house and the 5th house. So, what I did not mention is that the 11th house and the 5th house are fixed energies, okay? Just meaning they sit in the middle of the sign. They represent Leo as the middle of summer. Aquarius is the middle of winter. And when you think about fixed energies, right, these have the strongest resonance with the current temperament, right? Also, fixed energies kind of lock in longer. If you know a fixed sign, most of them get known for being determined or stubborn. Okay, shut y'all out. And I'll take it to the North Node too, right? Because these energies tend to linger whenever we're going through transits and things happen or change during these times, they tend to linger on like it's a fixed energy. So I'll speak about this, right? In 2020, we were going through the North Node transit of Gemini and Sagittarius, right? So there were changes being made. There were conversations being had about C19 restrictions, right, as far as travel. But eventually, because these are mutable energies, things just kind of changed back after a time, right? We started buying flight tickets and having super spreader parties and all this kind of shit, right? Like things got back to a level of a norm at a certain point. Now, I want to talk about the North Node that we recently were in with Taurus and Scorpio. So this is the other pair of fixed energy. These two signs also deal with money, assets, inheritances, okay? And right after the Gemini transit of the North Node, we went into the Taurus North Node, okay? Taurus has to do with money. Scorpio has to deal with other people's money. And after the shutdown of the world, we literally had the rent moratorium in the States. Now, I don't know what was going on globally as far as like real estate, but I do know that private equity companies swooped in and bought a lot of single family homes. Also, they bought a lot of just, apartment complexes and shit. I mean, they were buying up a lot of real estate, okay? And this happened. And then there was also the rent moratorium that I feel like helped that as well. There wasn't a mortgage moratorium, okay? So if you had a mortgage, you were still very much on the hook monthly to pay that bank, okay? But they did allow people who were renting, because it was always so, especially to Americans, to buy property, rent property. That's a great way to build wealth and assets, right? And that's so a lot of people, would buy these investment properties. But if you have tenants who are not paying what they need to pay because of a rent moratorium and it's legal. So right now it was completely legal to stop paying rent, right? Private equity, of course, found the opportunity and took the advantage to say, hey, I'll get this off your hands, right? You're in one house, you got this rental property, it makes total sense to give up something just to get from up under all their weight because there was so much uncertainty at the time when C19 was happening, right? So a lot of people sold their houses. It was a good time to buy too. A lot of people bought houses then as well. But there was a lot of that. Basically, there was a transfer or a shift in the real estate landscape and housing that happened in America. And these have lasting effects. Like rent ain't been the same since. Okay. Even mortgage, like if you're trying to get a new mortgage, baby, these prices, whew, the interest rates, what? Okay, it's not like buying a house, years ago, like, maybe 10 years ago, right? It's been that big of a drastic change, okay? So people are even raising questions like, humanity, what are we doing? Have we literally just priced ourselves out of housing? So, these things happened back in the Taurus, Scorpio North Node a couple years ago. A few years ago, but now that we're in Aquarius and we're thinking about our humanity, now we can kind of see the future of that too. So, it takes a minute for like things to happen. Like anytime we get to an Aquarius energy, 11th house energy, these are already things that have probably been into motion, been into play, but the change is felt at this time. And it can be kind of abrupt too as well if you really didn't see how the future was unfolding, Yeah, so humanity, what are we doing? Let's talk about one other thing. Let's talk about the alchemy. I wanted to get to that point. Now, I've discovered a system that works within astrology. It's called numerical astro alchemy. I take the numerical values of the aspects of those set of astrological houses, or whatever we're looking at when it comes to the aspect of that astrology, right? We take that aspect, we add the numerical value, and we reduce it to a single digit number or a number that appears within the 1 through 12 astrological houses, all right? So when we look at the axis of Leo and Aquarius, we have the 5th house plus the 11th house. 5 plus 11 makes 16. I always smile when I do math because, bitch, I be focused. I be having to calculate. So that's 16. And then if you take the 16, because 16 is not going to appear on the 12th house wheel, we're going to reduce that. So 1 plus 6 makes 7. So the way that we can alchemize the 5th house of what we entertain, what makes us feel good, and how that will generate and affect humanity is through our choices, through our decision making, through our diplomacy, okay? Through understanding that the partnerships and relationships that you choose will take you the long ways, right? Essentially, right, we're getting to that Venus aspect of choice and harmony. Okay, so Venus is the planet, it rules the 7th house, right? So the 7th house is about choices, decisions, diplomacy, ultimately partnerships, collaborations when it comes to relationships, okay? So the things that we are entertaining, the associates from the 11th house that we, if I'm playing chess, right, if that's my game, right, and I enjoy it, I'm going to probably be at the chess club, okay? And I'm going to, which is the 11th house, right, our associates. And I'm going to build relationships, okay? This is how we alchemize it, right, through the 7th house. When we add it all together, I'm just establishing relationships that are harmonious, okay? Now, what happens if we entertain things that are progressing and it's like, whoo, shit, I don't know about these groups, right? These are our unharmonious relationships, okay? And this is just a spiritual message to me to just remind us that choice is important. Always remember that you got a choice in what you're entertaining, okay? If you've been entertaining bad habits, you can make better choices that are more harmonious with what it is in the future that you're trying to alchemize and realize in, okay? If you are entertaining people that don't treat you right, okay? People who are, hurtful and don't encourage you, don't cheerlead for you, okay? And it doesn't really feel good, right? Then why are you making choices? What kind of decisions are you going to be making for these relationships to alternate the future? Okay, because if I keep entertaining the same relationships, I'm going to keep getting the same reality kind of a thing, right? So that's the alchemy. So humanity, what do? We alchemize, okay? We're going to alchemize the energy. And we get into our bag where we really focus on what adds balance, right? How do we balance these things? How do we balance what it is that we enjoy and the progression of it, right? If we do enjoy a little hip hop, I'll pop a cap in that ass, right? Like, can we keep it on that, or are we gonna be like drilling all the time? You know what I mean? I don't know, that wasn't even the best example, but I do think sometimes about humanity, especially when it comes, this is a big one. This is a big one. I'll just say this, and then I'm gonna go. I don't want to make this video too long. But when it comes to entertainment, right? Think about how for a long time they would always tell us that entertainment was not influencing humanity. Bullshit. Bullshit. Kanye done said it. A lot of people have said it, okay? The things that we entertain, 5th house, do affect the future that we bring in. 11th house, right? If I entertain a spirit of fear and sabotage and self-sabotage and shit, that's the kind of future that I'm probably going to have. I'm going to be scared. I'm going to always be self-sabotaging myself because of the fear, right? Versus if I entertain like open to try, just let's just see what happens, right? I may have a reality in the future where I get my hope and my wish from the 11th house, okay? But it's all up to what it is that I entertain. So let me make better judgments on this shit that I'm entertaining, right? Because if I'm entertaining some guy who's saying that, oh yeah, it feels good, right, to talk about red rum in somebody or deleting somebody, that's what y'all say, right? Or deleting somebody, maybe that feels good. But if I do this, right, what is it? How does it affect the generation? How does it affect humanity? Okay. Is there some kid who's going to be listening to my song and being like, and catch a body on a Saturday night and destroy his fucking life and somebody else's, you know? And it happens all the time, and we can see the natural progression of our entertainment, okay? They told us back in the day this shit was just entertainment and for kicks and and then we realized it was niggas who was really making careers off drilling people and then rapping about it. You know what I mean? That's what we are as far as like progression, y'all. And I just bring this up because it's a tool, this astrology shit, but it's also a reminder too of how God's psychology works, right? The things you entertain are going to generate, and that's just that on that, right? You don't need an astrologer to tell you that, of course, right? But if it's helpful and it helps us to make better decisions, well, shit, let's talk about it, right? Humanity, what are we doing? Okay, what are we entertaining? Because it's going to affect our generations to come, right? And can we make better choices so that we can have more pleasant relationships and pleasant connections amongst each other, right? Or is it just going to be a bunch of unharmonious situations and relationships that are off balance? Because that's the other aspect of the 7th house too, right? Is if it's not harmonious, the relationship that we're in is typically harmful, okay? Sometimes we be in neutral spaces and shit like that where we just at a grocery store and we just got to shop, cool, right? But even then, there's a measure of harmony amongst that, right? Because I'm not going to bother you, sir. You don't bother me. It's not like somebody is obnoxious ramming you with their cart and shit like that, just making things unharmonious, right? But that's the other side of Venus, right? The things that we entertain, if they are not harmonious, they would cause our relationships to go all haywire and stuff like that, and can ultimately affect the future that we have, which is the point of the Aquarius North Node. So essentially, y'all, that's all I got on this right here. My name is Alchemy. I've enjoyed making this content, and if you enjoy the content, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, all that, and definitely come back for more, because I'll be coming out with this as I feel it's been on my spirit and been called upon me to share what I got. So if you can resonate, let me know too. Until then, y'all take care. Bye.